Retro Future.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, as always I am Bunsert of Radio Retro Future. One of the benefits of being unemployed like I am right now is that you can actually have time for other projects, including projects I'm doing for other people. And one of these projects is a commission made by Jess Grams, a mask that is inspired by Dankard Lexicon's mask, a character I should be really playing more. Anyway, the point of this video is to A, show off my stuff, because I'm actually quite proud on this one. And second of all, also to kind of explain my ideas behind its design. Why do I make the things the way I do, is basically what this video is all about. So here we've got the mask. I just suggest we start with the strip, which is just some leather I had left. I kept it rather tight around the head because this leather tends to stretch, especially when it gets wet. So I want to keep this as tight as possible for now. I basically put it together with screws. So you can remove it at any time, make adjustments at any time. I rather would have used a brass or golden buckle, but I didn't have one of those laying around right now, so I might have to look for that this week if I have the time. These are grooves I made in with a power tool, a round-headed phrase. Basically then I painted in with black. And then with gold, made some adjustments with red paint, which you can not see, which is the intention, to make some corrections. Yeah, and that's how I did the simple Art Deco-esque decoration. The mask surface itself is vegetable tainted leather. You can put that into permanent shape with by putting it into boiled or hot water. And you can basically shape it any way you want. You may need a number of tries to get it in the shape you want exactly. And then I made some adjustments to the edges, again with a power tool. And then I painted the edges black, so it does look, well, a lot more worn, I suppose. The surface itself is just very thin water paint, and just kind of rubbed it in. To give it that worn look, and I was pleased with it, so I just kept it the way it was. As you can see, I used a lot of screws in this. I prefer screws because I can remove them and put them back into place anytime I want. It's very handy during the creation process itself, but also, for example, if you don't use the mask anymore, you can remove all the parts and build something new out of it if you so please. The lens is from an old Konica camera, I think from the 90s, before the digital age. You can get them from thrift stores or markets or whatever, very cheaply, and you know, they have these awesome mechanical looking bits. This is the only gears, in this case you can see, I painted them gold. I left the rest of the construct the way it was, because the thing is, if I would have painted this gold, it would have been at the expense of all these other parts, the actual golden parts. It would become very golden, very homogeneous, and all the details would simply fade away. Another example where I use such contrasts is here with these screws. These silver screws are from an old printer. These cogs, I don't know where I got them from. Maybe they're from old clocks, or maybe I bought them new. Unfortunately, I ran out of those, so I had to use a standard messing or brazen screw here to keep this old piece of print plate into place. This is an ordinary piece of print plate, not sure what kind of component it was, but I cut it out again with a power tool with the boss saw-like discs. You could also use a phrase, I suppose, but it gets very messy if you use a phrase. But for those hard to reach places, that might be the solution. This is a plate from a very cheap alarm clock. It also had these plastic gears already in place. I painted these ones plastic as well. The benefit of having plastic gears here is that it also contrasts somewhat with the actual brazen part of it. Again, I like contrast. This wire here is from an old radio station, and I attached it to this earpiece, which is made out of polymorph plastic. A bit of an experiment. I like to mix cyberpunk with steampunk, so I like to add wires and stuff like that. And this part here ends at the lower end of the jaw, so when you look at it from the front, it looks like this is actually sticking out of the neck. So I'm really proud of that. You can also, of course, detach it if you don't want to have the earpiece. You can either detach it here or here. I didn't paint it because I don't know how it fits the user. This was a commissioned piece after all, so I just told him you can shape it when you get it in the mail. You can shape it any way you want just by throwing it into hot water. For those not familiar with polymorph plastic, you buy it in bags filled with white pebbles. You can throw them in boiling water. Basically, the pellets then become colorless. You can shape them in any way or shape you want. You can also use a heat gun, which I specially bought to, do this. And the benefit of polymorph plastic, you can use it to fill those nasty gaps you don't have the material for. With a heat gun, you can even make it almost liquid. Be careful with that, because that stuff sticks to everything. So what I did here was add a crude, lowly heated piece of polymorph plastic, put it in there, then took out the heat gun. You do have to be careful, because I don't know what the melting temperature of this plastic is, but it's a lot higher, than the polymorph plastic. The downside of polymorph plastic is you cannot grind it into shape with a power tool, or you cannot really rework it with sandpaper or anything like that, because it has such a low melting temperature. Yeah, you only will make it worse. So yeah, you cannot make it as smooth if you don't know what you're doing. I would advise, if you want to make flat surfaces, use something metallic, flat. Maybe a knife could do the job, I suppose, and kind of sculpt it into shape. And that's basically how I filled this gap right here. Put in a rough sample of polymorph plastic, heat it with the heat gun, and then use something flat and smooth to put it into the shape you want. And I'm actually quite proud of it. Yeah, I could have done a better job, but it's not a vintage point you see, so I left it at that. That's why I put the mark of myself, Dankert Lexicon DL, at the bottom, so you can only see it from, low angles, basically. But the mask kind of looks cool if you kind of look down like this into the thing. You can also see the clear contrasts. I kept the top of the lens clear of anything, because this is basically what you see most of it. So if I would put all kinds of gimmicks and cogs and whatnot on it, you might not see this and this anymore. So I'm very careful with that. More on perspective, when you look at this from the side like this, you might think, well, it looks a bit, loose and unconnected. However, when you look at it from this perspective, it looks very much connected. Also because of the distance of the cogs compared to the rest of the lens. So those are things I think about when I make masks like this, which have a lot of depth in it. If the surface of the mask is smooth, that's a whole other matter. But because you have so much depth, look at how far that lens sticks out. Another reason for me to use so much polymorph plastic to fill in this gap, especially right here, is because it's very hard to get a lens like this fitted on a surface like this. As you can see, it's very curvy, it's uneven, especially when it comes to the nose. Here you can see a screw, which is actually a normal wood screw, that goes into the plastic of the lens. And that's a way how you can kind of create distance between the lens and the mask, because you cannot attach the lens directly to the leather. There must be some distance, and wood screws, I discovered, are a way to do that. because it allows you to drill straight into the wood. It also had a ring here. You can maybe see it, kind of see it. Yeah, this piece right there. There was a wood screw that piece as well. Only I started making adjustments. I got too ambitious, and then the ring broke. Fortunately, then I thought of polymorph plastic. And the polymorph plastic I simply nailed into the leather. Yeah, you can see it because it's under the padding. Padding is, with these kinds of masks, also very important because this lens forces the leather to be a certain way. So you need to compensate for that to make it a comfortable experience, to make it look like it actually fits to your face. You need to add a lot of padding. And I used simply PVE maps. I didn't glue this together. Also, maybe the customer wants to make some adjustments, so I didn't want to go too wild with the super glue. You could also, of course, use textile glue in this case. I'm not sure what this kind of material is, by the way. I just had it laying around, but it was thin. I need a thin material because I already had these PVE mats in there. I prefer to use filth, but all the pieces of filth I had left were way too thick. They were actually from a medieval gambeson I had to cut shorter at one point. This was the mask he wanted. This was some wire used for welding. I simply rubbed into a coil. This was some kind of chain I just had laying around. And again, I don't know what kind of camera this was. I'm just really happy I had it. Also, maybe... it has a good day. I can actually get the gear still working. Yeah, it could have been better, but I kind of lost my patience trying to get it properly working. Anyway, still very proud of that mask. Still a lot of people are very interested in it, as it appears, because that mask inspired this mask right here. It's less bulky. You see more components. Yeah, I'm quite proud of it. Especially this part. I may actually attach a similar earpiece on the existing mask I kept for myself. So, yeah. That was a short explanation. Oh wait, I didn't explain this part here, which is a old engine part of I think a printer, but I might be lying. I think this is from a printer. This might also have been from the same device. I'm not sure. I basically just ripped it off another piece of print plate. I now finally get everything. Of course, I want to make more use of components like compensator. I think, is it a compensator? I don't. Print plates have a lot of these pieces, and I want to do a lot more of them in the future. But it happened to be because I experimented with screws and such. I had some holes in the mask I wanted to cover up. This was one way of doing it. The same goes for that metallic part I added over here. Now it's a detail, but I actually used it to camouflage a hole in the leather. The same goes for this little piece I added here, which was part of a plastic ring. I'm not even sure you can actually see it because it's camouflaged so well. But yeah, I thought it was a neat little detail. You might not even notice it, but it's still there to camouflage the space that was behind that engine part. Of course, the engine part was a full circle, but I cut out a piece once again using a power tool to bend it into shape later on. So yeah, did some nice experimenting with this. I used my power tool in new ways. I never used them before. Experimented with padding, experimented with this, polymorph plastic. Yeah, I can really recommend using polymorph plastic to fill in gaps like these. So, pretty proud of it. My first commission. Thank you for tuning in to Radio Future, everyone. I hope this video has been inspiring. I hope it gave you some new ideas for your own future projects. Of course, you can also make commissions. Of course, these kinds of projects do not have my priority. I am a video maker primarily now. So please, if you want to make a commission, it might take some time. That being said, I bid you adieu, and as always, make it your way.
Much better than north. North is dry and cold and dark and red, and I prefer green, fresh, sun earth actually.
For Steampunk, for example, the future is one of the greatest inspirations. It's funny how something that hasn't happened yet can inspire such huge and massive creativity.
Don't have too much respect for the old literature and play with literature. That's what I would like everyone to do.
Get your stuff done. Get your stuff done. They're waiting on you.
Do it all once more. Watch me. I'm going to show you the next two parts right here.